Good morning, YouTube. This is HeKnowsHisSport, bringing you that heat and that fire. Today's topic, NBA playoffs, part A/part 1 of the game twos. Obviously, the rest of the game twos are going to take place today. But I wanted to talk about first and foremost the first game, the Memphis Grizzlies. That game right there, we all know the score. It was 111 to 105. The Memphis Grizzlies won that game. They won it with true grit. They won that game with mental toughness. And basically, they won that game because they really wanted it more than anybody. The reality is, you can't take nothing away from the Memphis Grizzlies. They did their thing. I did have them winning one game. I believe that the Memphis Grizzlies just traded the third game that they were going to win to the second game. By 3 games, I had OKC up 2-1, but obviously OKC, the concerns that I had in the previous video when I said that they would, take off possessions and they would lax, those things were evident. But more so, you got to give credit where credit is due. Tony Allen, he played that pit bull defense. This is not the first time we've seen this before from Tony Allen. We've seen Tony Allen play this level of defense on a LeBron James. We've seen him play this level of defense on a Kobe Bryant. So we've seen this level of defense before. So it's not a matter of, defensively how dominant he was. It was just a matter of the fact that he did his thing defensively. He limited Kevin Durant to 12 for 28 shooting. Anytime a guy that's that prolific of a scorer shoots the ball that way, hats off to Tony Allen. But the reality is, as great of a defense that Tony Allen played on Kevin Durant, that was not the reason why the Oklahoma City Thunder lost the game. Not taking anything away from Tony Allen, like I said, hats off to him. But the reality is, Russell Westbrook is the Achilles heel. The same guy that I says is the X factor, the main guy that's going to put the series over the top, is also the same knucklehead sometimes that does erroneous things on a basketball court that costs his team and puts his team in liability situations. For instance, him taking as many shots as Kevin Durant, that's ludicrous, that's insane. You are a point guard. I understand that he is not truly a point guard. He is actually a shooting guard masquerading as a point guard. But the reality is, he's playing the point guard position. He should not be taking no more than 15 to 16 touches per game. If you ask me, it should be no more than 15 touches. Those other 13 touches, 7 of them could have went to Reggie Jackson, and the other 6 could have went to Serge Ibaka. The reality is, you would have had more of a balanced attack. You would have had Serge Ibaka having the ball in his hands more, which would have allowed him to be more of a prolific scorer. Hence, that would have put more pressure on Zach Randolph, and Zach Randolph wouldn't have hit past 20 points. And it also would have put more pressure on Marc Gasol. Hence, Marc Gasol wouldn't have been in double-digit points, because now you would have had a low-post threat that would have been scoring the basketball, and it would have demanded Zach Randolph, and it would have demanded that Marc Gasol would have to play some kind of defense. And then if Reggie Jackson would have had 7 more touches, it would have allowed you to have another guy in the perimeter that you would have to deal with. A guy that Tony Allen wouldn't be able to stick, because Tony Allen would be too occupied with Kevin Durant. The reality is, it would be another guy that Mike Conley couldn't stick, because Mike Conley would be occupied with Russell Westbrook. So Reggie Jackson would be that X factor in the sense that he would be a free roaming guy in the perimeter that Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol would have to play a little bit more help defense. And then they got this kid named Lamb. He could have got involved too. An argument could have been said that Russell Westbrook probably could only had 12 touches, and 3 of those extra touches would have went to Lamb. Now you would have had a balanced attack. But if OKC wants to win Game 3, I still got them winning this series in 5 games. I still believe that they're going to be disappointed in the fact that they couldn't go up 2-0 in their home, and it's going to cause them to return the favor to Memphis, and I think they're going to beat Memphis, because I had them up 2-1 by the time Game 3 happened. But the reality is, they made the series harder on themselves because Russell Westbrook, he didn't mature from last year. And the reason why he didn't have a maturation process, it's not his fault, but, thanks to Patrick Beverley, he was injured last year. So thereby him being injured, It caused him to not go through one more year of the playoffs, for him to grow up as a player and to understand the reality of things, to understand the order of things. See, Russell Westbrook has this mindset that he's every bit as good as Kevin Durant, which in reality he is not. He needs to understand that he has to be the Scottie Pippen of that team. I don't get this. I don't understand why you sitting there taking as many shots as Kevin Durant. You're not supposed to take 28 shots and then shoot 11 for 28. Kevin Durant has a reason for shooting 12 for 28. Tony Allen was on him. Anybody that Tony Allen is on is going to have a bad shooting night unless you are Kobe Bryant, because Kobe Bryant is the master at playing against Tony Allen. But Kobe's not a factor in these playoffs, so I shouldn't be bringing him up. But the reality is Russell Westbrook should not be taking 28 shots because, one, he is not a prolific scorer. Two, he shoots a very low percentage every time he does that. I mean, I was watching, First Take the other day, and Skip Bayless brought an impactful stat saying that this kid, anytime he shoots 25 or more shots, they're 14 and 15. And that's including the game, not last night, but 2 nights ago when they played against, the Memphis Grizzlies that Monday night. He contributed to the 15th loss, which put him under 500. So this kid has no business shooting 25 or more shots. He shouldn't even be near the range of 18 to 19 shots. This kid should be shooting 15 to 16 shots per game, because this is how he can be more efficient. He can use some of that extra scoring in the assist category, because people forget the assist is a second way of scoring. If he has his over 10 assists, he's thereby scoring because he's getting other people involved. I don't know what's wrong with this knucklehead Russell Westbrook, but if he keeps playing like this, he's going to make this series longer than what it has to. He needs to get into his head that he is the Scottie Pippen of the team, and he needs to let Kevin Durant dominate, and he needs to get more people on this team involved. My goodness, man. I feel like I need to coach that team. I don't know what Scott Brooks is doing over there, man. I mean, this is simple basketball 101. But like I said, these kids these days, man, I don't understand. It's like the basketball knowledge is not sinking in with them. You're making a series that's supposed to be easier, harder, because you're playing the game in a stupid, knuckleheadish way. Five thumbs down for Russell Westbrook, man. He needs to go fall back somewhere. And Kevin Durant, he doesn't go without blame either. Kevin Durant needs to understand that, he needs to take better shots. When you're playing against a Tony Allen, you can't be trying to take passive jumpers. Tony Allen thrives off stuff like that. You have to play him aggressive. He should go watch some playbooks on Kobe Bryant, man. You got to make the referee call a foul when you're playing against Tony Allen. Kobe's the master at that. You got to take it to him. That's how you get him in foul trouble, and you get him out of the game. He needs to go start doing some history books on that and watch how Kobe Bryant, does his thing when Kobe Bryant's putting his body of work out there on the basketball court, and understand what he needs to understand from that. I'm sick and tired of this, man. These boys are supposed to be more elite than this. What's going on? Making my predictions look bad, making He Knows His Sport don't look like he don't know his sport, when in actuality, He Knows His Sport actually does know his sport. They're making me look bad, when in actuality, it's simple basketball 101. All they got to do is just use their freaking brains and stop playing out of their ass. Now the next game, Golden State Warriors versus the Los Angeles Clippers. Yeah, the Clippers blew out the Golden State Warriors by 40 points, 138 to 98. I did say Blake Griffin would dominate in this series because I didn't see nobody down low that would be able to be a problem for him. But the reality is, Curry and Thompson still haven't showed up in this series. Where is the Splash Brothers? Once the Splash Brothers decide to show up, and once they decide to, knock on the door and say, hey, we're officially in the playoffs, then the Clippers are going to be able to start doing their thing. Rightfully so, they did what they were supposed to. They won one game. They get credit for that. But you don't let a team blow you out by 40 points, because when you get blown out by 40 points, it's like you lose a game and a half. And you can't be having that happen. That can psychologically mess you up, even though you got 2 games going to your home court. I mean, I like the fact that, they got home court advantage with them going to play in Golden State. And I do believe that those boys are going to lift their level of play up. And I think that this is the best thing that could have happened to Stephen Curry and Thompson. The best things that could have happened to Klay Thompson is that they're going to be at home. Sometimes guys need to go back home and get back to the foundation of things so that way they can get their game up. So I got Golden State winning game 3. Like I said, my prediction will stick. I do believe that they're going to win 7 games. I believe that they're going to win the 7th game in Los Angeles Clippers. Hence, game 1 already proved that they can beat the Clippers at the Clippers home. Now let's get to the next game. Atlanta versus Indiana. I like the switch of Paul George on Jeff Teague. This reminds me of when the Lakers had Derek Fisher on Westbrook and they switched Kobe Bryant on Westbrook back in 2010. That was a good switch that the Lakers did because Kobe Bryant was able to neutralize and contain. He didn't shut down Russell Westbrook, but he heavily contained him. And this is the same thing that's happening. Paul George heavily contained Jeff Teague. I think that you need to see more of those matchups. I like the fact that Paul George was talking trash, which is a lost art in this Rudy Poo basketball generation, you know. But I like the fact that, you know, he was talking trash, which was a good thing because in actuality, you have to do those type of things. You got to be able to get into your player's mental. I told everybody, basketball is 90% mental and 10% physical. So the reality is, you know, he did a good thing by getting into Jeff Teague's head. And then he balled out of control. He played a really good game. Lance Stevenson, you know, he was putting Carroll, that defensive juggernaut that they have on the Atlanta Hawks, he was putting him on ice skate. So I like the fact that he was doing a good job. But Roy Hibbert, I mean, come on, man. He's a disappointment. He's a shell of himself. He's not playing nowhere near the level he played last year. I don't even think he's playing 5% of the level he played last year. I mean, when you 7'2", and you got the girth and the mass of a 290 frame, and you sitting there and you coming up me in these playoffs, yeah, I understand that he's maybe too big and too tall for a fast team, but the reality is, on the offensive end, he should be dominating. 7'2", you got all that height, and you're not putting them boys in the post, you're not backing them down, you're not letting them know what time it is. I mean, come on, man. It's like this boy regressed, man. It's like he's having a mental breakdown. I don't understand. You know, I'm going to have to rank him higher than George Hill. And you guys already know in previous videos how much I detest George Hill being on this team. I'm probably going to have to rank Roy Hibbert higher than him now. Talking all that trash, and then you not showing up. I mean, come on, man. If you want guys to give you the ball, you got to go out there and dominate. What's going on? Everybody else trying to show up in this series. Even George Hill, who's been playing like crap, who's been playing like turd. You know, he's trying to show up in this series. And you letting him outdo you? Come on, man. Come on, Roy Hibbert. You better than that. I mean, come on. I mean, they did bounce back like I thought they would. And I still got Indiana winning this game and winning this series in 6 games. But the reality is, Roy Hibbert is playing like crap, man. He needs to step his level of play up before I have to revoke his center card. Now, let's get to the next game before I have to, you know, I don't even want to continue talking about Indiana because they just, I don't know, they're just weird and ilky, man. Let me get to the next team. Now let's get to, you know, Brooklyn and Toronto. Brooklyn played a hell of a game, you know. Brooklyn, the game was tough, you know. It wasn't like it was a game that, you know, they were going to lose, but I expected Toronto to get one game. Like I said, I didn't expect the Brooklyn to sweep them, but the reality is the Brooklyn will dispatch this pretender team in 5 games because lest you forget, lest I'm going to have to remind you, Game 3 and Game 4 is going to be in Brooklyn. So I expect Brooklyn to win both Game 3 and Game 4. And by the time they head back to Toronto, they'll be up 3-1 and they'll demoralize this young team. You know, Paul Pierce was in foul trouble early, and hence that's the reason why Toronto was able to win this game. Even though, credit to DeMar DeRozan, you know, he scored a big night. He had 30 points, and he hit some impactful shots down the stretch. The reality is, if Paul George was not in foul trouble early on, the reality is Toronto would have lost this game. But it is what it is. You give credit where credit is due. Like I said, I had them winning 1 game, but that's about it. They're not winning no more games. This is a pretender team. Brooklyn's going to let them know what time it is in Game 3 and in Game 4. Now let's get to the next game. Washington and Chicago. Washington, this was the most surprising. Now granted, you know, in playoff basketball, you always get that lesson that's taught to you, you know. Every year you always have a breakout team, you know. This year it seems like Washington is that breakout team. You know, I've been quoted many times before saying that, you know, John Wall was going to be, you know, the best point guard in the league in the next 2 to 3 years. I have said in previous videos that Bradley Beal was going to be a guy to deal with. I have said that Nene is a force. If Nene is healthy, I mean, you saw that. Joakim Noah is the DPOY, but look what Nene was doing to him. See, this is the thing. When you got a low post game like that, which Roy Hibbert needs to take lessons from a Nene. When you have a low post game like that, I mean, good night. You can put it to the defender, no matter how great the defender is. So the reality is, hats off, to Nene. Hats off to Bradley Beal for having over 25 points, and hats off to John Wall. I mean, he made some defensive lapses, and he had some offensive, bad plays down the stretch that ultimately could have still cost the Wizards. And the reality is, Kurt Heinrich, I don't know what's going on with Kurt Heinrich. I mean, this guy, the NBA, rigged it for him for one free throw, for two free throws. I mean, they gave him that free throw call because Nene really didn't foul him, and then he botches it. They could have brought this game into double overtime, but the Chicago Bulls, they just can't score for nothing, man. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with that team, boy. But like I said, Derrick Rose not being there, that was the concern. I thought that the Chicago Bulls would win this series by 6 games. I'm still going to stand by it. I think I'm crazy enough, and I'm bold enough to say that Chicago might mess around and take the next 2 games in Washington. I know a lot of people might call me crazy for that, but the reality is, I think that the Chicago Bulls can do this because they've been slapped in their face. And the only way they're going to win this series is they basically got to do what Washington did. Washington came into their home, took 2 games. They need to go back and take 2 games. Yes, the Washington Wizards are more talented, but the Chicago Bulls are the stingiest defense in the NBA, and they need to act like it. The only problem with the Bulls is they just can't score. And I knew that was going to be a concern. Hence I had the Bulls winning in 6 games. I'm going to stick by my prediction. This may very well be the series where this may be the only prediction that I may get wrong. But the reality is, it is what it is. I mean, you can't be right 100% of the times, but the reality is, as long as you're right 90% of the times, that's still better than being wrong 0% of the time. So, I mean, if Washington wins the 3rd game or the 4th game in Washington, we know the series is over. But I still think the Chicago Bulls will bounce back. They have the hearts of warriors, and I believe that they have the stingiest defense in the NBA. And when it's all said and done, we'll see what's going to be the outcome of it. Part 2, I'm going to talk about the Miami and Charlotte. I'm going to talk about San Antonio and Dallas. And I'm going to talk about Portland and Houston after those 2 games are played. So I will be making a video tomorrow morning about those games. Hence, we'll see what the outcome is. But based off of the games that we've played, like I said, the fans are getting what they're paying for. They're getting excitement. Anybody that's a true lover of the NBA, anybody that's a true basketball fan, anybody, who loves the thrills of the playoffs. This has been one of the most exciting playoffs in years because you have a lot of teams that you're not expecting to do things. They're actually going out there and doing things. And then you got Washington, they're coming of age. Not only did they make the playoffs, but they're actually making noise. I'm really proud of them. And I'm proud of a lot of the effort that I'm seeing going on with these teams. If only the NBA would allow the playoffs to look like the first round throughout the rest of the playoffs. But in reality, we know that's not going to be the case. So far, so good. So far, I'm happy. But, hey, if you like these videos, which I know you will, make sure you subscribe to HeKnowsHisSport YouTube page. Make sure to follow me on Twitter. Make sure to like me on Facebook. Check out the site, www.HeKnowsHisSport.com. You will see these rich videos on my website. You will also see rich articles about different topics, interesting articles that will, make you look at things from a different perspective. Look at, certain athletes from a different perspective. But this is HeKnowsHisSport. Checking out.